He ran 800 head of cattle on 2,200 acres of Alberta grassland, and he had never once asked anyone for help. By the end of the second week he was asking her to stay. "I want to tell you about Wade Colter, because I think most of us know someone like him, or we have been someone like him at some point. The kind of man who mistakes silence for strength and stubbornness for principle. The kind who keeps doing things the hard way not because it works, but because it was his father's way and his father's father's way before that, and changing it would feel like burying them a second time." Wade was 41 years old when his brother died. His brother's name was Frank, and Frank had married a woman named Iris Hadley about 6 years before the illness took him. The two of them had built something together. A modest cattle operation near Ponoka, a wood frame house with a propane furnace that kicked on too early every October, a small herd of black Angus that Frank tended with a kind of patient devotion that Wade had always privately admired, even if he had never said so out loud. Frank and Iris did not have children. What they had was each other, and when Frank died in March of a cancer that moved faster than any of them had expected, what Iris was left with was a 1/3 share in the Colter family operation, which Frank had inherited from their father and had held quietly, without drama for 12 years. Wade was not cruel about it. He was not the kind of man who said ugly things to a grieving widow, but he was not welcoming either. He drove the 3 hours from his own place east of Red Deer to attend the funeral. He helped carry the coffin, and when it was over, he shook Iris's hand and told her she could come out to the ranch anytime she wanted to talk about things. He said it the way you say it when you do not expect anyone to take you up on it. Iris Hadley took him up on it 6 weeks later. She arrived on a Tuesday in early May, which is the worst possible time to arrive at a working cattle operation, if you want the man in charge to have patience for you. Wade was in the middle of spring calving checks. He had lost 2 calves to a late cold snap, and his hired hand Bert had pulled a muscle in his back and was moving at about half speed. When Iris pulled up in Frank's old truck, she was still driving Frank's truck. Wade was crouched in the pen with a calf that was not nursing right, and he did not stand up right away. He finished what he was doing first. Then he stood up and walked to the fence and looked at her. She was 36 years old, medium height, dark hair pulled back. She was wearing jeans and work boots, not the kind of boots you buy at a western wear store for the look of them, but the kind that have seen actual mud. Wade noticed this, though he would not have said why it mattered to him. He introduced himself properly, which he had not done at the funeral because they had already known who each other was by then. She said she knew. He said he supposed she did. He offered her coffee. She said she would rather see the books first. That was the moment Wade Colter understood that the next few weeks were not going to go the way he had assumed. He had assumed she would come out, look at the land, maybe cry a little because it reminded her of Frank, accept a fair offer for her share and go back to whatever her life in Edmonton was. Iris Hadley was a structural engineer. She worked for a firm that did industrial assessments. Grain elevators, commercial buildings, aging infrastructure. She spent her working days finding the thing that looked solid from the outside but was failing at the core. Wade did not know this about her yet. He would understand it later, and when he did, the whole 2 weeks would make a different kind of sense. She sat down at his kitchen table with the ledger books he had kept for 11 years, and she opened the first one without asking permission, which irritated him, and she did not look up for a very long time, which irritated him more. He made coffee. He brought her a cup. She thanked him without looking at him. By the time she closed the third ledger, something in her face had changed. It was not alarm exactly. It was the expression of a person who has confirmed a suspicion they were hoping was wrong. She asked him how much he was paying per hundredweight to his feed supplier in Lacombe. He told her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked when he had last looked at what other suppliers in the region were charging. He said the Lacombe supplier had been the Colter family's supplier for over 30 years. Iris set down her pen. She looked at him directly for the first time since she had sat down. She said, "That is not an answer to the question I asked you." Wade Colter did not like that. He did not like the tone, and he did not like the implication, and most of all he did not like the particular sensation of being correctly identified. He had not measured the feed costs against regional alternatives in at least 4 years. He knew this. He had told himself it wasn't necessary. Loyal customers got better service, and you didn't walk away from a 30-year relationship over a fed dollars a ton. He was wrong about the few dollars. The difference Iris found, in feed costs alone, was running him close to $14,000 a year over what comparable suppliers in central Alberta were charging. She showed him the numbers on a piece of paper she had brought with her, already prepared, already calculated, because she had requested his basic operation data from the accountant's records 6 days earlier. She had not told Wade she was going to do this. She had not asked. She had the right, as a 1/3 owner, to request those records, and she had exercised it. Wade stood in his own kitchen and looked at the number on her piece of paper and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "Those numbers might not account for delivery reliability." Iris said she had spoken with 3 other suppliers already. All of them offered delivery windows within 48 hours. He said, the Lacombe outfit knows our herd. She said, the feed doesn't change based on who's selling it. He said nothing more. She asked if she could go out and walk the land. He said he supposed she could. What happened over the next 10 days was not a fight. Exactly, though it sometimes had the shape of one. Iris Hadley did not come to the Colter ranch to win an argument. She came because she had inherited a stake in something and she intended to understand it. She walked every section of the property. She noted the carrying capacity, the condition of the pasture in the north quarter, the state of the water lines that hadn't been properly maintained since Wade's father had run the place. She took photographs. She wrote things down in a small notebook she carried in her jacket pocket. Wade watched her. He did not help, but he stopped actively not helping, which for him was something. On the fourth day she asked him to walk the east section with her and tell her what he saw. He was not expecting this. He expected her to tell him what she saw. Instead she asked him the question and then she listened. Wade Colter had not had anyone ask him what he saw and then actually listen in a very long time. He talked more than he intended to. He told her about the wet spring 2 years back that had softened the ground in the lower east corner. How the fence posts in that section had shifted, and he had been meaning to reset them but kept getting pulled to other things. He told her about the coyote pressure on the south edge. He told her that the north quarter was the best grazing land on the property, but he was underutilizing it because of a water access issue he hadn't gotten around to solving. Iris wrote in her notebook while he talked. Then she asked him one question. She asked him why the north quarter hadn't been prioritized. He started to answer and stopped. The honest answer was that his father had always run the herd heavier on the south pastures, because that was what his father knew. And Wade had kept doing it because you don't change things in the middle of a season. And then one season became 11 years. He said something else instead. He said it was a matter of timing. Iris looked at him for a moment and wrote something down. On the 7th day she showed him a summary she had been working on. 3 pages handwritten, then typed out at the kitchen table on the laptop she had brought with her. She presented it without drama, without the particular relish of someone who wants to be seen winning. She put it on the table in front of him and sat back. The feed supplier issue. $14,000 annually. The north quarter underutilization. She had estimated the foregone carrying capacity at roughly 80 to 100 additional head per season, which, at current cattle prices, represented a significant loss. The water line on the north perimeter, one section of the main line had what she believed was a slow leak, visible in the ground moisture pattern she had photographed over 3 separate mornings. She had looked up the cost of repair and the cost of continued loss and shown him both figures side by side. The fencing on the east section. Not an immediate crisis, but it would be one within 2 seasons, and then a 5th item which Wade had not expected. She had identified the Colter operations calving schedule as running about 10 days later than the regional average, which put the finished cattle coming to market in a window when regional prices historically ran 2 to 3% below peak. She had pulled the price history from a public database. She showed him the chart. Wade looked at the 5 items for a long time. He said, "My father calved in April." Iris said she knew. She said it wasn't a criticism of his father. He said, "I know it isn't." Then he said nothing for a while. He got up and poured himself more coffee and stood at the window looking out at the yard, at the corrals, at the line of spruce his father had planted as a windbreak along the north side of the barn when Wade was 12 years old. His father had planted that spruce because the winters were brutal, and the cattle needed shelter, and his father had understood that some problems required you to do something now that would pay off in 20 years. Wade had always been proud of that windbreak. He had never connected it, until now, to the idea that his father had also been a man capable of changing how he did things. He said, "The calving schedule, what kind of shift are you suggesting?" She said she wasn't suggesting anything. She was showing him the data. What he decided to do with it was his operation. He turned from the window and looked at her. He said, "It's our operation. I keep saying the wrong thing by accident and I'd like to stop." Iris Hadley said nothing for a moment. Then she said she appreciated that. The following days were different. Not easy. Wade Colter did not become a different man between Tuesday and Thursday, but different in a way that mattered. He called the Lacombe supplier himself and had a conversation he should have had 4 years ago. And the result of that conversation was a price adjustment that recovered about 60% of the gap Iris had identified. He was surprised. He had expected to lose the relationship entirely. Instead, the supplier said he wished Wade had brought it up sooner. Wade thought about that for a few days. He brought in a water technician to walk the north perimeter line. The technician found the leak in under 2 hours. It was not in the location Iris had identified. It was about 30 meters further east. But her observation had been correct. There was a leak. He drove fence posts in the east section on a cold Thursday with Bert, who was moving better by then, and he did not say much while they worked, which was normal for him. But something about the silence was different. It was not the silence of a man who has closed himself off. It was the silence of a man who was thinking. On the last evening before Iris was planning to leave, They sat at the kitchen table after supper, and she showed him a preliminary plan she had sketched for the North Quarter. How to run the water access, what the cost would look like, what the return timeline might be if they moved a portion of the herd north next season. She had also, quietly, priced out what a fair market valuation of her 1/3 share might look like, and she had written that number on a separate piece of paper and folded it, and set it to the side of the table, without commenting on it. Wade looked at the North Quarter plan. He asked her a few questions, technical ones, the kind of questions that told her he had been thinking about it seriously. She answered them. He thought some more. Then he looked at the folded piece of paper. He said, "I'm not going to buy you out." She said she hadn't asked him to. He said he knew. He said the reason he wasn't going to was not just the money, though the money was honest too. He said the reason was that she had seen things in 2 weeks that he had not seen in 11 years, and a man would have to be a fool to buy out the person who could do that. Iris said, "That's a very practical reason." He said he had another one that was less practical, and he didn't say anything more about it. She looked at him for a moment, then she looked at the North Quarter plan. She asked if the proposal was that she stay involved on an ongoing basis. He said he thought that would be good for the operation. Yes. She asked what involvement looked like, from his perspective. He said he wasn't sure yet. He said he thought they should probably figure that out together, and that he was aware it was the first time in 11 years he had suggested figuring something out together with anyone. So she should be patient with him because he was not going to be good at it right away. Iris Hadley picked up the North Quarter plan and looked at it again for a moment. Then she said she was a patient person when the reason was good enough. There was a lot of work ahead of them. The North Quarter, the calving schedule, the year of adjustment that any real change requires before it starts to show up in the numbers. None of it was going to be simple and some of it was going to be uncomfortable. Wade understood this. He was not a man given to easy optimism and he did not become one. But that evening, after Iris had gone to the room at the end of the hall where she had been staying, Wade Colter walked out to the corrals in the dark the way he did every night. He stood at the fence and looked at the herd. He thought about his father, planting spruce trees that would not be useful for 15 years. He thought about the North Quarter, dark and ungrazed on the far side of the property, holding all that grass that nothing had eaten in decades. He thought about how you could run something for a long time and still not fully see it. That is the thing I keep coming back to when I think about Wade and Iris. It is not a story about a woman who was smarter than a man. It is a story about what happens when someone walks in from the outside and sees what familiarity has made invisible. We all have a North Quarter. We all have a 30-year supplier we have never questioned. We all have something we keep doing the old way, not because it is working but because it was always done that way. And changing it would require admitting that a long time has passed without us noticing. The question I want to leave with you is this. What is the thing in your life that someone else could see in 2 weeks, that you have been standing too close to for 11 years? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.